Hello and welcome to the Political Opinions podcast, where every opinion is given equal footing and political tolerance and debate are given their proper attention in a world where both are on the decline. Today's episode will cover opinions in favour of and opposed to inheritance tax. Now, inheritance tax is a tax levied on assets and money inherited by an individual from a deceased person. This can include the value of a property, the amount of money in bank accounts, financial assets, etc. Its existence is justified as a way to help reduce the wealth gap across generations. However, others oppose it as it is being unethical in the way that even in death you have to pay taxes. In this episode, we will compare these opinions and more. Quick reminder, the aim of this episode is not to try and argue for or against one side of the debate, but rather to highlight the different opinions on the topic and provide a comparison between them. I will begin with the arguments in favour of inheritance tax, followed by those opposed with a comparison at the end. I will also be doing these arguments as generalities and not going into specifics of whether it should be 100% inheritance tax, 10%, etc. We're just taking it as yes to inheritance tax and no to inheritance tax. The main argument in favour of inheritance tax is that it helps to reduce the inherent wealth gap in society by reducing the financial head start that some individuals gain over others. We live in a society that values equality of opportunity, and the ability to inherit large sums of money goes against this, as having this money can provide you with greater access to education, work, and different locations to live in, as you can, for example, have to pay less back in student loans, you can afford houses in more expensive places, and therefore you have more access to different work opportunities. This is something that cannot be accessed as easily by poorer people, and so having inheritance tax can help reduce this unfairness and level out the playing field. Inherited wealth is also unearned, and so some argue its beneficiaries don't deserve it when compared to, say, earned income. This unearned money creates inequality, and so taxing it is fair on the basis that those who receive it did nothing for it, and therefore to some do not deserve it. And some also argue that this is a better way of taxing through taxing unearned wealth than it is to have, for example, higher income tax, which is very much earned, as opposed to this. Inheritance tax is also a perfect example of redistributive taxes from the top to the bottom. Those who pay the most inheritance tax are the richest and at the top of society, given they have the most money to leave behind. Inheritance tax, therefore, redistributes wealth more effectively, as this money goes from those at the top to everyone else, through the government spending on public services, welfare, and other programs. Inheritance tax also only targets a small section of society, and therefore its impact in terms of individuals affected is low. Most people don't have enough wealth to qualify for income tax, and as such don't pay it. It's only extremely high levels of wealth who pay the inheritance tax, and as such it's minimal cost in terms of the number of people affected, but maximum benefit in terms of the money potentially going to help as many people as possible. Another argument is that those who pay income tax are already very rich, and therefore losing a proportion of their wealth will not send them into poverty. It is likely that they will still have a large amount of money left from their inheritance which they can keep. However, they must still pay their fair share and help level out the playing field across society. And finally, inheritance tax also encourages individuals with money to spend the money during their lifetime and not to keep it sitting idly in bank accounts or assets until their death. This helps the economy due to higher consumer spending, investment, and other things such as this. And finally, furthermore from this rather, most parents spend money on their children, hence the advantage, during their lifetime and don't leave it till death. And therefore, a lot of people support inheritance tax as the money that is left behind is not necessarily essential for the person's survival, but rather is just another example of an inherent wealth gap that society needs to reduce. Moving on now to the arguments opposed to inheritance tax. The main argument opposing inheritance tax is essentially that it is unfair. The individual who died likely worked hard during their lifetime to accumulate their wealth and money, and so some say the state has no right to come in and take a large proportion of that just because the individual has died. Especially if the person has left a will declaring what they wish to happen to their assets, it is unfair for the government to take a large proportion of that away. Furthermore, some people may have worked hard and saved purely because they want to leave the money to their children and their children. Perhaps this individual grew up poor and wished for their grandchildren and children to not have to experience the same thing, and therefore they have worked hard and saved their money to leave it to those in the future. And as such, to some, it is immoral, therefore, for the government to come and take this money, go against their wishes, and harm the future of their offspring. Some oppose inheritance tax as a final tax upon money that has already been taxed. Essentially, this is the idea that the money left behind will have been through all the other taxes the government can muster, be it income tax, VAT, capital gains tax, whatever it is, the likelihood is this is money left over from other taxes, and therefore to some it is immoral to add yet another tax onto someone, especially on the basis that this is essentially taxing their death. The money that they leave behind may also be good for those who receive it in terms of everyone in the economy if they use that money effectively, be it starting a business, spending it on education for their children, making investments, spending the money in shops. All of this, therefore, helps the economy, and to some people who view private spending as far more effective than government spending and oppose the idea of government spending on a large scale, inheritance tax can be detrimental to wider society. Some also argue that it is unfair to redistribute earned income to those who haven't earned it. This links to a wider debate on state assistance to people, but essentially some people believe that it is unfair to take earned money from a dead person who is then going to pass it on and give it to someone who potentially, to some people at least, don't deserve this money just for the sake of equality. And then finally, on the question of equality of opportunity, some argue that because these people have earned their money, they have the right to spend it as they wish. That yes, you can have equality of opportunity, but that shouldn't come at the cost of people's choices with what they do with their hard-earned cash. If they want to spend their money on financial aid for their children, on education, they can do so because it's their money, and it's essentially to these people unfair to declare what is a good and bad use for someone else's money. Moving on now to the comparison. On the question of fairness, those supporting inheritance tax believe that this money isn't earned, and therefore it isn't unfair to take it away, and in fact it's more fair for these people not to receive a large financial benefit just because they were born or related to someone who died. However, those on the other side believe it is unfair to take away money someone has earned and to tax it further upon their death. Their money, which they likely earned so that they would be able to choose what happened to it, is theirs to do so with, and as such it is unfair to take it away. On the question of redistribution, those favouring inheritance tax believe that it is unearned, and therefore is better to redistribute to everyone. They say that this is the best example of top-to-bottom redistribution, and often money inherited is not going to be spent. It may sit in assets and other areas that don't benefit the economy, and as such redistribution is a better course of action to take. However, those on the other side, firstly, may oppose redistribution on the basis that they believe that government can be very bad at spending money, and they may even oppose something such as state welfare, and as such it is bad to redistribute money that someone who earned and left behind, to essentially take that away and give it to someone who either doesn't deserve it or for it to be, in these people's view, wasted by the government. Regarding when people believe the money should and is spent, those favouring inheritance tax believe that most of the money and the important spending occurs during the person's lifetime, and once they die, it is merely extra money that is going to unfairly benefit someone who didn't earn it. The most important spending has taken place, and therefore taking and taxing some of this money is not that bad. However, those opposing inheritance tax believe that the individual may have chosen for their money to go to future generations and have worked for that future, and therefore not spent their money when they were alive, and that it is unfair to declare a use for someone's money when they have earned it and it is theirs to spend. On the question of equality, Those favouring inheritance tax believe that it reduces the inherent inequality within society and improves the quality of opportunity, as only those at the very top are the ones most effective, and the money goes from one individual, or maybe a small group of individuals, to benefiting everyone through government spending programs. However, those on the other side believe that these people earned their money during their lifetime and can spend it as they wish. They say that it isn't equality if someone loses unearned money and others receive unearned money. The person who is on welfare to these people didn't earn the money they are receiving, just as is the person who loses their money didn't earn it either, and as such, on the basis no one's earned it in this way, it's wrong to take it from one group and give it to another. On the question of what to do with leftover money, those people in favouring inheritance tax believe that there will be lots of money left over for these people, and as such they cannot really complain when compared to the benefits that their taxes will provide. Essentially, you have to be rich to pay a lot of inheritance tax, and even if you lose 50% of £1 million, you'll still have £500,000 left, which is a lot more than most people have. However, those on the other side believe that this is still a high proportion of money which is unfairly taken due to an individual's death, and therefore they oppose it, especially if the person, when they were alive, wanted this leftover money to be spent, or a larger proportion of it to be spent on future generations, and not taken by the government upon their death. On the question of is this money going to be useful, and is inheritance tax useful for the economy, those favouring inheritance tax believe that it encourages individuals to spend the money in their lifetime so it is not taken away upon their death, and therefore this is more beneficial to the economy as a whole, and as such it is better than merely having it sit in a bank account and then pass it on for another generation who probably won't spend a lot of it. However, those on the other side believe that money may be used beneficially by people who receive the inheritance tax to start businesses, to buy things, and all of that will help the economy more than it will giving it to people who haven't earned it and to a government who will waste it. And they will also still spend the money in their lifetime. They will still spend money regardless of inheritance tax or not, because they will need to spend it on things, and the remainder will go to their future generations, which to some people is a better use for it. And then finally, on the question of who is the most important stakeholder in all of this. Those who believe inheritance tax is good say the most important stakeholder is the people who suffer through inheritance tax. That is, the 99 or 90, a large proportion of society who do not have a financial head start and as such are left in the dirt compared to these people and believe that there is a system which perpetuates inequality for those at the bottom, and as such this unearned wealth should be taken. However, those on the other side believe the most important stakeholder is the individual who has died, as they lose their right to choose what happens with all of their money on the basis that a proportion of it is going to be taken no matter what they desire. Overall, those supporting inheritance tax believe it is unfair to take unearned money and redistribute it to others to make society fairer, whilst those opposing inheritance tax believe it is unfair to take money someone earned and go against their wishes for it on the basis that the money isn't earned and shouldn't be redistributed. Those supporting inheritance tax come from the standpoint of the person who receives it not having earned it and it being better spent elsewhere, while those opposing it come from the standpoint of the deceased person losing their right to choose and it being worth spent through the government. It is likely that we will see a continuation of inheritance tax, and potentially an increase as governments seek to find new means of revenue in order to pay back the mounting debts that they have all incurred during the coronavirus pandemic. We will have to wait and see, however, what happens in the future. Ultimately though, what do you think? Do you believe in inheritance tax? Do you oppose it, and to what extent? And is there anything that I missed, got wrong, or could do better? Let me know in the comments or on Twitter. And be sure to check back on Friday for another episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you all soon.